Welcome to the first tutorial for MBA 626 Managerial Economics. In this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the basic concepts of scarcity and incentives in economics and how those relate to being an effective manager. So the first question that we want to answer when we look at being an effective manager is, what exactly do we mean by managerial economics? The first part of that is understanding what a manager is, which your book defines, broadly speaking, as being a decision maker on behalf of the firm. Economics, on the other hand, is defined by the book as the science of making decisions in the presence of scarce resources, which is a very good definition. But it's important to keep in mind at the same time that there are a lot of other ways that economics has come to be defined, either more narrowly or more broadly by a variety of sources. So a few of them I've listed here. Merriam-Webster defines it as a social science chiefly concerned with the description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, which might be a little bit more of a narrow definition of economics. Because when we think of economics as, or a manager as being a decision maker on behalf of the firm, there are a lot of other things that a manager has to make decisions over other than just production, distribution, and consumption. There are a lot of interpersonal relationships and other incentives and contracting mechanisms that go on within a firm. So Wikipedia offers a little bit different definition, which is that it's the scientific study of human action, particularly as it relates to human choice and the utilization of scarce resources, which is also pretty good because it still incorporates the idea of scarcity that we get from the book, but it defines the object of study as being a little bit broader to include all sorts of human action, which might include some of those relationships within the firm. Gary Becker makes things a little bit more general by saying that economics is basically the process of combining assumptions of maximizing behavior, stable preferences, and market equilibrium used relentlessly and unflinchingly. And what's important about this definition is that it captures the fact that economics is a set of tools that can help us understand a wide variety of situations and choices that managers might make, that consumers might make, and that employees might make within a firm. And so my definition, maybe to be a little bit broad and a lot more concise, is to say that economics is a set of tools for analyzing decisions. So why is economics important for managers? Well, at a broad level, economics helps us to understand incentives. Helps us to understand incentives in the internal environment, which includes the incentives of the firm itself, understanding the cost of inputs, the productivity of the inputs, the incentives and the relationships and the contracts between managers and employees, as well as the relationships between owners and managers. Whereas in the external environment, we think of those incentives involving an understanding of the incentives and behavior of consumers, which obviously we can't understand how our firm is going to benefit without understanding how consumers are going to respond to the decisions that we make as managers. Includes understanding the market structure and how competitive the market itself is. And it involves understanding the incentives of your rivals, since how you act might affect how your rivals respond and vice versa. Effective management involves a couple of different things. The goal of effective management is to maximize profits. Here we try to make a distinction in economics between accounting profits and economic profits. I won't go into a big description of that distinction here, but the basic idea of accounting profits is that it includes the profits after you've subtracted out all of the costs that can be itemized in dollar terms, or at least in terms of payments that the firm makes to specific factors of production or inputs. Accounting profits are usually bigger than economic profits because economic profits are also going to include a wide variety of other profits, or subtract out a wide variety of other costs that represent opportunity costs to the owners of the firm and the entrepreneur. For example, if I wanted to start my own business, but I could make $50,000 selling my labor services on the market, then my firm making an accounting profit of $40,000 would actually represent at least a $10,000 loss to me as an individual or as an entrepreneur, because of the fact that I could have worked for another firm for a salary of $50,000. So taking into account those other costs is important for the decision-making process, but wouldn't show up on a profit and loss statement for a firm. Some of the constraints that we need to understand include the input prices and availability, output prices, technology, and institutional constraints. And relating that back to the last slide, some of these are involved in the internal environment, and some of these are involved with the external environment. But as we segue into the next presentation and some of the more technical aspects, what I really want to emphasize in terms of the idea of maximizing profits is that a good manager is thinking on the margin. A good manager is thinking about how hiring one additional worker is going to increase or decrease the net profit of the firm. Right? How producing an additional unit or 10,000 units of output is going to increase or decrease the profits of the firm incrementally or on the margin. And so we'll talk about a little bit of the mathematics behind how we can better think on the margin in the next presentation. And then in the third presentation, we'll talk a little bit about how taking a long time horizon for decision making is more useful and beneficial to the firm than taking a short time horizon or a short-term outlook.